86% of organizations value professionals that upskill to advance their careers. It's never too late. Enroll for a self-paced online course to begin upskilling in monitoring, evaluation, accountability and learning, water, sanitation and hygiene, disaster risk reduction and management, food security and nutrition in emergencies, procurement and supply chain management, human nutrition and dietetics, maternal and infant young child nutrition. Apply today to enjoy a 10% discount.
Hello everyone once again, and welcome to today's webinar. This is a free webinar hosted by Humanitarian Global, and it is on procurement and supply chain management. And today's topic is understanding green procurement. Our key speaker for the day is Georgina. Hello, everyone who's joined in. I do see everyone from Daniel to Abdi. Thank you so much for sending your salutations. I see Konate, Mohammed. There's so many of us who are already sending in their salutations. Hello, Hassan, Joseph. Thank you and welcome to the webinar. Before we begin, I'd like to mention a few house rules. So house rule number 1, kindly do engage us in the chat section. Be very active in the chat section in terms of maybe if you need some assistance or you're facing a little bit of a technical issue, do engage us in the chat section, as well as if you're interested in any of the courses that Humanitarian Global offers, such as procurement and supply chain management, as well as some of the courses I will be talking about on training and workshops. You can let us know in the chat section. I usually encourage our participants to share their details with us. They could share their phone number as well as their email address and the course that they're interested in, and we will be able to reach back to you. Remember, here at Humanitarian Global, we take data privacy protection very seriously. So if you do share with us your phone number as well as your email address, no one else but us who are hosting the webinar are able to see your details. So do engage us in the chat section. We will also be engaging you in the chat section. Be on the lookout for the same. We do share a lot of links. We do share a lot of information in the chat section. Kindly do refrain from raising your hand during the presentation, because at the very end of Georgina's presentation, there will be a Q&A session where I will ask a number of participants to raise their hands and ask the questions live during the webinar. In case if you're facing any technical difficulties, just let us know in the chat section and we'll be able to assist you much quicker rather than raising your hand. Do engage us as well in the Q&A section, because we will be having a number of things that Georgina will be talking about. Remember, today's topic again is on understanding green procurement. And in case if you have a question, do engage us in the Q&A section. And at the end of Georgina's presentation, she will be able to address those questions. So those are the house rules for the day. And I do welcome everyone once again to the webinar. Before we proceed, we'd like to get into salutations from the Humanitarian Global team. So first and foremost, I will welcome Georgina to say hello to everyone and just give us a little bit background on herself. Georgina.
Thank you, Diana. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar today. Like you've heard, my name is Georgina. I've been in the procurement space for quite a while now, and I'm quite passionate about efficient procurement and sustainable procurement. And I'm excited to take you through this session today. And I hope by the end of the session, we shall both have learned something. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Georgina. We also do have a big Humanitarian Global team here that is working behind the scene to ensure that the webinar runs smoothly. The webinar is also hosted live on Facebook as well. So on behalf of my colleagues, that is Ian, Brian, Sheila, and Anthony, I do pass their greetings. My name is Diana. I am the training coordinator here at Humanitarian Global. And for today, I will be your moderator and welcome you to today's webinar. Remember, today's topic is on understanding green procurement. And with that said, before we move on to Georgina's presentation, I'd like to talk a little bit about procurement and supply chain management. Remember, here at Humanitarian Global, we do offer trainings on procurement and supply chain management. Okay, good. Thank you for the confirmation, participants. So here at Humanitarian Global, as I was saying, we do offer courses on procurement and supply chain management. And this is at the level of certificate, diploma, and postgraduate diploma. These are self-paced online courses, which you can take remotely from wherever you're joining us from today. I have seen Somalia, South Sudan, Nigeria. I've seen a participant from America as well. So do welcome you to explore these courses, because when you're undertaking these courses with us, you get to learn more about strategic procurement and management. You get to learn more about principles of logistics management, things such as contract management as well, e-procurement, e-supply chain management, especially in this day and time. You get to learn more about public procurement, including what we'll be talking about today when it comes to green economies in procurement, as well as ethics in purchasing and supply chain management, which heavily falls under the humanitarian and development field. With that said, we do have also a number of other courses that are upcoming. And these are trainings and workshops, and they fall under different areas, such as WASH, which is water, sanitation, and hygiene. We have one on communication, social and behavior change communication. We have a number of trainings on data collection, which include data collection for humanitarians using COBOL Toolbox and Open Data Kit. We have data analytics and visualization using SPSS and Power BI. We have one also on monitoring and evaluation. We have fundraising and resource mobilization for NGOs. We have a very important one that falls also under procurement and supply chain management, which is writing proposals and reports, as well as leadership and project management. So we will be sharing the link with you in the chat section to be able to interact with this with our calendar and explore our upcoming trainings. And just to mention just one or two, so just to show you how to register for these courses. So for instance, on fundraising, when you click on the link, it should take you on the specific page for fundraising and resource mobilization for NGOs. And the dates are indicated there, the upcoming dates. We do have two modes of learning, which is one is a 5-day training workshop, physical, and one is a 10-day online training that will be 2 hours a day. And for you to be able to register, kindly click on register on the dates that are given there. And once you've clicked on register, you will get a registration form. You'll be directed to a registration form. Kindly fill in your details. One very important part is to ensure you fill in the correct training. So for instance, when it comes to fundraising and resource mobilization for NGOs, I'll click on that. And then there's the training delivery option. Remember, I've told you there are two options. There's the online and the Zoom. The online and the on-site. So for instance, if I want online, I'll come and click on online and then continue filling the details and submit my form. Alternatively, like I did mention, you can let us know in the chat section. Let us know by giving us your phone number, your email address, and the course that you're interested in. We will be sharing all these links in the chat section as well, and encourage you to click on them and interact with our calendar, as well as have a look at the different courses and what they do have to offer. Under every course, we've put in the course objective, which clearly defines the objectives of the course, as well as what to expect while undertaking this course. We've put the programs, which is basically all the modules that you will be undertaking under every training. as well as the certification. So by the end of every training, you will receive digital certification. And this is hosted by HPAS, which is a global accreditation organization that does accredit all trainings in the humanitarian field. And what this does for you, it opens up marketability in terms of the kind of skills that you're going to be acquiring while undertaking the different trainings with us. With that, we can jump right into today's topic. Remember, today's topic for the day is understanding green procurement, and our expert for the day is Georgina. Georgina, the floor is yours.
Great. I hope you can all be able to view my screen. So for the next 40 or so minutes, I hope this will be a session that will be educative to both of us. So during this webinar, we are looking at understanding better what green procurement is, the importance of green procurement, its benefits to our organizations, what principles and guidelines we should follow when implementing green procurement, the strategies for implementing green procurement, and of course, just like everything else, what are the key challenges and solutions to these challenges when implementing green procurement. We shall also have a look at how to measure and communicate the impact of green procurement and any legal and regulatory aspects of green procurement, because of course, everything has to be governed by something. Then finally, we shall have a look at a few case studies within the humanitarian sector and outside the humanitarian sector. So let's start. So what is green procurement? What do you understand by green procurement? Basically, it's another term for sustainable procurement in the sense that we make decisions for purchasing or for sourcing items with the view of the environment and other social factors, okay? So for example, let's say if we are looking at purchasing or maybe having a construction in a certain community, we are going to look at it from the aspect of how does this construction affect the environment and the social well-being of the people in the place where we are going to have that construction. So that is a factor or a definition of green procurement or sustainable procurement. As you can see, the aim of green procurement is basically to minimize any negative environmental and social impacts, while at the same time maximizing positive contributions throughout the entire supply chain. Okay, to explain this further, I will take an example of, let's say we are building a dam in a certain area, for example, in Kenya or in Somali. Minimizing a negative environmental impact of a dam would be having safeguarding protocols in place, in that we are able to consider the depth of the dam or the size of the dam so that it doesn't overflow and flood the neighboring community or the neighboring area. So that's minimizing negative environmental impact. But at the same time, the dam should be able to give enough water, clean water all year round to the community. Now that is a positive contribution. So what is the importance of green procurement? Its first and foremost importance is, of course, having negative environmental impact, okay? We should be able to use the resources that we have, if it's solar energy, if it's wind energy, if it's water energy, basically ensuring that the footprint of anything new that we introduce into the environment does not affect the environment. Case in point, we have seen people nowadays going for more biodegradable items as opposed to probably using a lot of plastic, which affects the environment. Another importance, of course, is resource conservation. Green procurement looks at it from the perspective of, are we buying recyclable things? Are we using recyclable things? Are we using the things that, the resources that we have, if it's water, if it's solar, if it's wind, are we making efficient use of that particular resource? Are we conserving it? Okay, so we don't want to exploit the resources that we have. We are looking at using the resources that we have in the most minimal and efficient way. Another importance of green procurement is the climate change mitigation. Green procurement supports the reduction of greenhouse emissions, and it helps the organizations align with the climatic goals and commitments. Okay, we have seen organizations have campaigns around cut down one tree, plant two. That is climate change mitigation, because if we continue cutting down our trees, then it means we are exposing ourselves to climate change, because there'll not be enough recycling of the air, there'll not be enough conservation of wildlife, there'll not be enough water catchment areas. But if you cut down one tree and plant two, it means you're still conserving the environment, you're conserving the resource, you're ensuring that the whole ecosystem continues to operate at a maximum. Then also another importance of green procurement is to have proper stakeholder expectations. In the current world that we are living in, we find that a lot of organizations are really bending towards sustainable and responsible procurement processes. When we implement green procurement into our organizations, we are actually improving our reputations, we are actually managing our stakeholder expectations, because they know that we are actually conserving our environment and the social impact that we are putting out there in the communities that we are working in. And finally, green procurement has been seen in the recent years to improve supplier relationships, okay? As procurement professionals, at the end of the day, what we want is to have good relationships with our suppliers. If we encourage our suppliers to adopt eco-friendly practices, you'll find that they are probably using less resources. They'll probably look at having recyclable resources, which will definitely bring down, for example, maybe their cost of manufacturing, it will bring down their wastage. And as a result, they'll be happy because they'll realize more profits and they'll be thankful to you. So green procurement helps us nurture and develop this kind of supplier relationships. So what are the benefits of sustainable procurement to an organization? Okay, one of the benefits, like I've mentioned, of course, is the cost savings, because when you reduce how much you're wasting, when you invest in recyclable things, it means that you're not constantly buying the same things all the time. So you're actually channeling your resources to more strategic things, or you're actually realizing savings. So cost savings is one of the benefits of green procurement. Another benefit, like I've mentioned, is an enhanced reputation. An enhanced reputation will make people, citizens, stakeholders acknowledge you and realize that you're actually doing good things towards supporting the environment, towards supporting the social well-being of people, and it also increases your brand value. Something else is sustainable procurement actually aids in innovation and market leadership. In the private sector, we have seen that companies that actually have a lot of recyclable products, let's take, for example, the Coca-Cola group. If you look at their bottles, you're able to see the mark, the recycling mark on all of their bottles. And as a result, when we throw away those plastic bottles, Coca-Cola is actually able to come, pick them up, clean them up, and recycle them instead of investing in buying of new plastic to make new bottles. As a result, They have market leadership because they're able to realize savings, they're able to enhance their reputation, and also recycling and cleaning of those plastic bottles and any produce that they have helps them innovate and even come up with better products to give to the market, because they are saving on so many things. So they are able to redirect that money into research and development, and they end up pushing new, better things into the market. Again, sustainable procurement also helps us with regulatory compliance. Like I've mentioned, recently we have seen that governments, countries are actually moving towards sustainable procurement, saving the environment, climatic change policies. And as soon as your organization realizes that sustainable procurement is the way to go, you find that in some countries, you're able to stay in line with the compliance of that particular country, and therefore you're able to reduce your legal exposure and your legal risk. Again, risk management is another benefit of sustainable or green procurement. So what is risk? How does risk management apply in green procurement? Remember, when you have your suppliers and you want to encourage them to have more eco-friendly supply, or have recycling measures in place, or maybe have better innovation so that they reduce the impact or the emissions that they give back to the environment. If your suppliers are able to uptake some of these strategies that you suggest to them, you find that you actually minimize your risk of disruption as a supply chain professional. Because let's take, for example, it's an organization that is producing, maybe it's producing flour, okay, maize flour. If this particular supplier is producing maize flour for you, then they definitely have some of the wastage from the maize seeds. So let's take an example where they realize they could actually use some of this wastage, maybe to produce silage or to produce fertilizer or something else. It means, as a supply chain professional, in the event that you again tend to need that fertilizer, or you tend to need that silage apart from the flour, it means that it will be easily accessible for you, and you'll be able to reduce the risk of disrupting your operations in the course of doing your work. Again, something else is employee engagement. As employees, we actually feel proud of working in an organization that shows commitment to environmental and social responsibility. If somebody comes to you and tells you, I work for the UN, they definitely feel proud of saying, I work for the UN. Why? Because the UN has put its face out there. We are actually able to associate it with saving the environment, having social responsibility, and caring for the people around it. Another benefit is, of course, improved resilience. Improved resilience to mean organizations are able to remain relevant and to be able to continue with their business operations, even in changing market dynamics, and even in any pandemics or things like that. So when you have a sustainable or a green procurement kind of system implemented within your organization, you're able to face the challenges that might come up. If it's maybe, let's take, for example, a situation where you're probably in Sudan, and maybe you get to lack a major supply, maybe, for example, water to be brought to the community whereby you're doing your operations in, okay? If you have sustainable procurement in place, it means probably you have already engaged different other suppliers, some of whom have been able to set up let's say, water catchment areas, or some of whom have been able to dig wells for you. And as a result, you're able to minimize your disruption and you're able to continue offering the community around you the resource of water, okay? So you're able to stand and you're able to remain resilient for a longer period of time. So how does green procurement align with the humanitarian sector specifically, okay? So some of the ways in which green procurement aligns to humanitarian organizational goals will be especially in terms of environmental sustainability. Most of our humanitarian organizations are geared towards saving the environment, improving the environment, minimizing the climate change impact to the whole world or to the environment. And we have seen that green procurement actually is also geared or centered towards environmental sustainability. So that is one of the ways. Another ways is ensuring resource efficiency. We have seen that in the humanitarian world, resources are critical, and using them efficiently is one of the ways that as humanitarian organizations, we are able to remain relevant and we are able to make an impact in the community around us. So green procurement actually helps us align to this goal. Something else is health and safety. So green procurement actually looks for sourcing, or rather having solutions that are not hazardous to the environment and to the people that are around us. And green procurement is able to support you in this, because even if you're engaging suppliers, like we've mentioned, you will engage suppliers who have eco-friendly solutions, suppliers who look at recycling things, who are able to keep up with the safeguarding policies that you have. And as a result, you're able to stay in line with your health and safety goals. Then finally, it also aligns with our humanitarian goal of community and stakeholder management. Remember, green procurement looks at engaging communities, engaging stakeholders to understand what it is they need most. Do they need a well? Do they need to capture solar energy? Do they need wind energy? You know, how efficiently can they use these resources to improve their welfare and at the same time minimize the negative impact they're giving back to the environment? So again, you see how green procurement is able to assist us as humanitarians with this particular organizational goal. So moving along, what are some of the principles and guidelines of green procurement? Remember, we have mentioned that green procurement is majorly concerned with the environmental and social impacts, okay? So what are these guiding factors? Of course, one of them will be the environmental, social, and economic considerations. The economic part comes in where we get to save money, okay? Although in the humanitarian sector, that might be a bit difficult to measure, but we get to allocate resources efficiently. So one principle is environmental consideration. Green procurement will help us assess the impact of the products and services that we give throughout their life cycle. So we are able to know, are we reducing the carbon emissions? Are we reducing the pollution, whether it's plastic pollution or whatever kind of noise pollution, air pollution that might be released into the environment, okay? The waste generation that we do, is it waste that can be recycled, or is it waste that is hazardous to the environment? So that is a guiding principle of green procurement. Something else we should also consider is the social impact. So green procurement should also help us evaluate the impact of the goods and services to the local community. Are we able to engage them in a way that is able to give them a livelihood? Are we able to engage them in a way that offers them safety? Are we able to engage them in a way that of course, let's take, for example, is not infringing on their human rights. Okay, so that is another principle we need to think about when we think of green procurement. And then, of course, finally, the economic consideration. What are the economic considerations that we make before we implement the green procurement? What is the total cost of ownership of implementing the green procurement? If we face any, let's take, for example, if we have implemented a wind project, of course, the environmental consideration in that is that we are actually recycling the natural resource, which is wind, to produce energy. This energy does not have any emission, it doesn't have any pollution. So definitely we have passed the environmental consideration. So let's look at the social consideration. When implementing this particular wind project, wind power project, we have been able to provide employment to the young men and women within a particular society. We have been able to look at the safety of implementing that project. The windmills will not fall on any houses. People don't get injured while implementing that project. And also the maintenance aspect of it all. It continues to create a livelihood for the organization or for the community within that area. So again, we have considered the social aspect. The economic aspect of it, the wind project will definitely use the natural resource of wind efficiently. Therefore, we have considered all the principles in this particular example of implementing a wind project following green procurement. Okay, I hope that is clear. So another principle again is supplier diversity and ethical sourcing. So what should guide us in implementing green procurement in relation to supplier diversity and ethical sourcing? So we should be able to consider suppliers of diverse backgrounds, okay? Minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, because it promotes the economic inclusivity of all these people and also assists us to have resilience in our supply chain, okay? Remember, we've said the economic consideration is also an aspect of green procurement. Something else in regards also to supplier diversity is having ethical sourcing. Are we following the best practices? Are our suppliers giving good working conditions? Are they in line with the human rights? Because we don't want to get engaged with people who do not follow this. It will definitely affect us at the end of the day. So that is another guiding principle we could consider before we engage suppliers, in as much as they might have passed the environmental consideration and the social consideration of our green procurement implementation. So as you can see, there are benefits to this as well. We are able to enhance our resilience when we diversify our suppliers. We are able to have community support, because remember, if we are going into a certain specific community, let's say we are going to Botswana in a community to implement a certain project, and we are looking at women-owned businesses, we are actually supporting that community and creating a livelihood, okay, and improving our supplier resilience in the process of doing all that, okay? Another benefit is also it helps us have reputation enhancement. If our organization is known for ethical sourcing, it creates a positive brand image, because we shall be known that we actually support the minority in the community. We actually do ethical sourcing. We don't have any under the table deals. We actually consider the environmental impact of our sourcing. We actually ensure our suppliers also follow certain environmental considerations and social considerations before we start trading with them. So it definitely improves our outlook, our reputation in the market. And again, of course, like everything else in supply chain, it helps us reduce our risk, okay? We are able to keep our disruption in check. We are able to reduce our risk in all our transactions. So how do we implement green procurement? What are some of the strategies of implementing green procurement? So assuming your organization has not yet implemented green procurement, these are some of the ways you could consider to implement it, and you could maybe have a look at them and suggest them to the management. So one would be to integrate sustainability into our procurement policy. Okay, when developing, every organization has a procurement policy. So when developing your policy, you could be able to have a clear and comprehensive considerations on sustainability. You should be able to bring out or outline the commitment of your organization to environmental and social responsibility throughout the procurement process. This could be maybe you could put clauses like, we are looking at an organization with minimal carbon emissions, or we are looking at an organization that has eco-friendly products and things like that. Those are some of the ways you could incorporate that in your policy. Something else you could do is have stakeholder involvement. Your stakeholders in this case would be your fellow procurement people, your managers, the executive, for them to appreciate the role, or rather the benefits of having sustainable or green procurement within your organization. We have already looked at the benefits. So those are some of the things you could use to drive the stakeholder involvement and make them in line with what you're looking to implement, for them to give you their support. Something else you could also do is to ensure that this objective, the green procurement objective, is actually in line with your organizational goals. You do not want to implement something that is not in line with your organizational goals. And then also you need to be able to establish a clear guideline and criteria when evaluating suppliers based on their environmental and social performance. So this criteria will be implemented or integrated with your supplier selection process, okay? So that anybody who wants to trade with you, or anybody who wants to have business with your organization, they are able to know that this organization actually respects green procurement, and I need to have A, B, C, D for me to be able to do business with them and to fit into their goals, and to definitely have a long relationship with them. Another strategy, of course, is supplier engagement and collaboration. Like we've said, you could educate your suppliers on the importance of green procurement, for them to be able to appreciate that they stand to do cost savings, they stand to build a good reputation when they look at implementing sustainable procurement into their policies. Something else you could also have under the strategy of supplier engagement is to have collaborative assessments. In as much as suppliers have their own sustainability practices, you could also request to be involved, so that you're able to identify areas of improvement, and then you're also able to give them insight as to what it is as an organization you're doing and how they can implement it in their organization. This will help you have joint innovation, which will encourage your suppliers to have better solutions to cater for your needs. And also in the event they have, let's say, for example, they get new information on how to do things better, they are able to easily share that with you. Then another final strategy that you can have when implementing green procurement is to follow the circular economy principle. So what is circular economy? So this is a model of production and consumption that involves probably sharing, leasing, reusing, refurbishing and recycling existing materials and products for as long as possible. So this is just a principle of procurement, and also some organizations actually follow this particular principle. So how can this be done? Again, during your stakeholder management or supplier involvement, you could probably look at product designs, yes? Be able to put your heads together to see what is the best products you could actually give the community around you that are durable, that can be easily repaired or can be recycled. Okay, then also you need to look at the recycled and recyclable content of your products. I have given an example of the Coca-Cola plastic bottles. When you look at them, you normally see the recyclable content of them is probably 5 times or 7 times, which means that particular bottle can be recycled up to 7 times before it's considered end of life. And that is a circular economy principle that particular organization follows. You could also look at remanufacturing and refurbishing items. Let's take, for example, you're in a community where you're providing desks and chairs for their schools, or maybe just for their community hall. These are items that could be easily refurbished and be used over time before they are finally considered end of life or no longer useful. So you should be able to consider this as well when looking at implementing green procurement into your organization. Then you could finally also look at leasing and sharing. You might find that some of your suppliers will want to partner with you when implementing some of these solutions within the community. So let's take, for example, an organization that gives out solar energy. Yeah. So for the solar panels, maybe you don't have enough resources to buy 150 solar panels. You could look at partnering with an organization and maybe lease and share with them that particular cost, okay? So you're able to implement a solar panel project within a specific community, and both organizations are able to benefit from that because you're using minimal money, but at the same time, you're also improving your brand and creating awareness and having a positive environmental and social impact within the community that you're working in. And then, of course, finally, another principle of circular economy is, of course, looking for ways to reduce waste. If you're going to recycle that waste, or if you're going to generate less waste, it's another principle you also need to look at when implementing green procurement within your organization. So those are some of the those are just 3 strategies that you could consider if you want to implement green procurement in the event your organization has not yet implemented it. So like everything else, green procurement has its challenges. And some of the challenges that we face, especially in the humanitarian organization, is limited resources. We have funding from our donors, and it's definitely limited to do some of these things. Another challenge is the complex supply chain. We find ourselves as humanitarians having very long and very complex supply chains, and this might hinder us in having efficient and sustainable procurement. Something else is the lack of supplier engagement. We find that most suppliers don't always prioritize sustainability. They actually look at it from the perspective of, I need to invest, that is sunk costs that I don't want to uptake right now. And another challenge is the regulatory compliance. You find that especially a humanitarian organization operating in different countries, it's unable to keep up with the different regulations within the different countries, and therefore you end up having a lot of diverse laws and regulations, and you're not able to keep up with all of them. So what are some of these solutions that you could look at in the event that you're facing some of these challenges? So some solutions will be to prioritize sustainable procurement in your budget. When you're looking for donor funding or when you're looking for money and allocating the resources that you have, you could prioritize sustainable procurement. So you could maybe look at it in terms of setting aside some money for training, setting aside some money for technology adoption. Technology adoption will probably be systems that actually assist you in measuring your impact of green procurement and things like that. You could also do proper supply chain mapping. When you're able to lay down your supply chain step by step, you have better visibility and you're able to identify potential areas that you could actually innovate and improve on to realize the benefit of green procurement. Something else you could do is have supplier engagement and collaboration. When we were looking at strategies of implementing green procurement, supplier engagement was one of them. This can actually help you create awareness with the supplier, be able to show them the benefits of green procurement, and as a result, both of you end up in a win-win relationship. Then finally, you could also do risk assessments and see how best you can comply to that. Have a framework that is able to identify and mitigate some of these potential risks. Let's take, for example, if it's the compliance risk, you could look at maybe the international standardization, which is widely accepted in multiple countries. And if as an organization you look at complying with that particular ISO, then it means you've already solved part of your risk. Some other ways you could overcome challenges of green procurement if you're not in the humanitarian sector is, of course, looking at addressing the cost concerns. Most people think that green procurement is quite costly. So you could actually do a total cost of ownership to show that it is actually not as expensive as most people think it is. You could also look at addressing the economic benefits of green procurement. When you reduce your legal risk, you have definitely reduced how much cost you're going to do. You could also look at showing how it brings cost savings and how it helps you better use your resources and have efficiency. Another way of overcoming risk again is to highlight the incentives and subsidies that you get to enjoy when you have implemented green procurement within your organization. Governments are moving towards sustainable and green procurement, and as a result, they are able to offer tax incentives, tax subsidies, and for you to be able to actually venture into that kind of procurement, okay? So that is also something else you could highlight in the event that you're facing some challenges in green procurement. So how do you measure and how do you communicate impact? One of the ways, of course, of measuring anything is having key performance indicators. If you're dealing with your suppliers or probably as a supply chain professional, you want to show how well you have been able to implement green procurement and its impact, you could probably look at how well have your purchases been able to meet sustainability criteria. If you're using systems like Coupa or you're using systems like SAP Ariba, they're able to guide you as to how to source sustainably and how well all your purchases have been able to meet this particular criteria. So it could actually be easy for you to do that. You could also look at carbon emissions. If you're working in an organization where you partner with people who produce a lot of carbon, you can be able to work with organizations that are able to measure these carbon emissions and see if you have been able to reduce that. So that is a KPI on its own. Something else you could do is have sustainability reports. Okay, so your organization should be able to showcase the progress and commitment to your stakeholders. If it's new projects that you have gotten into, what is their impact to the environment? What is their impact to the social well-being of the community? And from there, you can be able to derive your sustainability report. Another way you could communicate your impact is via marketing and branding. You can be able to communicate your organization's commitment, maybe to circular economy principles or to sustainable procurement in the marketing materials, thereby enhancing your brand reputation. Then you could also recognize, your suppliers as a way of measuring and communicating the impact of green procurement within your organization. When you appreciate your suppliers, they become more confident in you, and you're able to help them, or rather encourage them, to look for more innovative ways to support you in your sustainability and green procurement venture. Okay. This is just some of the ways, some of the KPIs that you could look at that we have already discussed when measuring your green procurement. So of course, percentage of sustainable purchases, carbon emission reduction, water consumption reduction. So these are some of the examples of some KPIs you could look at. I've mentioned that for percentage of sustainable purchases, systems like Coupa and SAP Ariba could actually support you in doing that. Another KPI would be supplier sustainability rating. When it comes to appreciating your suppliers, you're able to know who is actually supporting your sustainability ventures or efforts by using the sustainability rating. Then of course, you can be able to show from undertaking sustainable procurement, how much cost savings have you been able to realize? Cost savings could be in the form of reducing wastage, improving lifespans of items, or maybe having reduced maintenance and repair costs on whatever projects and items that you venture into. Then of course, the supplier collaboration metrics, again, you're able to measure how many collaborative initiatives with suppliers you've been able to undertake and improve your sustainability practices. Okay, so those are just some 6 KPIs that you could actually look at. So how do you communicate green procurement, both internally and externally? So internally, you could create awareness, you could have internal newsletters, and you could have you could use your intranet platforms. So if as a department you're looking at having more sustainable procurement, you could be able to let your colleagues, your stakeholders be able to know this by using these internal communication platforms. External communication, this can be done using public reports. If, for example, you're publishing your sustainability report to publish it publicly, you can be able to incorporate some of this information there. Also, in the press releases, let's take, for example, you've undertaken a new project. It's a very big project. You could actually have some of the newspapers, the internet, highlight it in a press release. You could also share it in your social media pages, and you could also collaborate with your suppliers to help you communicate some of these goals and achievements. And of course, again, stakeholder engagement. For example, as humanitarians, probably some of our organizations are owned or rather funded by the donors. So you could also just communicate to the donors, let them know what you're doing, how it's impacting the reputation of your organization, how it has improved your organization, so that it could also encourage them to continue donating to your cause. Then, of course, we have said you could have partnerships and alliances. You could partner with industry leaders, or you could even partner with your fellow NGOs to implement better sustainability efforts. And as a result, this will give you a bigger communication platform. And of course, you'll be able to improve your company's credibility and reputation. So those are the 4 ways you can communicate the impact of green procurement with people around you and people within your organization. So finally, what are some of the legal and regulatory aspects of green procurement? So like I mentioned, we have relevant international standards. We have the ISO 2400 for sustainable procurement. We have the environmental management system ISO. We have social responsibility ISO. We also have the occupational health and safety ISO and the energy management ISO. So remember when we looked at the challenges of implementing green procurement, and compliance, regulatory compliance was one of them. So these are some of the ISO that you can use to solve this particular challenge. You could pick one of these ISO and align to it. So when you align to it, it's widely acceptable in many countries. So you'll be able to overcome that particular challenge of compliance. Okay, so I hope that is clear. So when you come to government regulations and incentives, you find that some countries actually offer incentives for public procurement regulations. Some countries, some governments actually have eco-labeling programs whereby they are able to give you certifications if you're producing environmentally friendly items. They are able to give you tax incentives. These are some of the economic benefits of green procurement. And then also, they are able to give you grants and funding. So you, as a humanitarian organization, you can also get funding from the governments that you operate in if you're seen to support sustainable and green procurement, conserving the environment and improving the social impact. And then again, also you find some jurisdictions actually have mandatory reporting whereby you have to show in detail how well your sustainable or green procurement efforts are progressing. Then of course, some consideration would be performance metrics. So you find that in some jurisdictions, a mandatory reporting. So again, of course, in some jurisdictions, you will be required to have environmental compliance. You'll be required to have social responsibility. You'll be required to have waste management policies in place. You'll be required to use sustainable materials, ethical sourcing, and of course, performance metrics. So this will be required for you to do when you're signing your supplier contracts, okay? So apart from the ISO and apart from the government regulations, something else you could also do is have some of these clauses in your supplier contracts. And then of course, have dispute resolution clauses and termination clauses. Good. So for the case studies, we shall quickly look at the case studies as we wind up. So one of the case studies is the Unilever sustainable sourcing. So all of you know Unilever. It exists in so many countries across the world. So what happened is Unilever recognized the need to ensure sustainable sourcing of agricultural raw materials for their products. So they wanted to address the concerns about deforestation, labor rights, and environmental impact. So what did they do? First of all, they introduced a sustainable agriculture code to guide them in the sustainable sourcing practices across their supply chain. So remember we said for you to be able to implement green procurement, you need to look at your supply chain and have visibility of it so that you're able to identify where you can actually make efficient or do sustainable procurement, yeah? So this can be done by effectively mapping out your supply chain. Then after mapping out their supply chain, they collaborated with suppliers to promote sustainable practices. So this is where supplier engagement comes in. You have mapped out your supply chain, you have identified areas to improve on, then you partner with suppliers who are actually key stakeholders in that particular supply chain. And then finally, they engaged with NGOs and governments and industry partners to drive a systematic change. So what was the result? When they did all this, there was a significant increase in the use of sustainably sourced agricultural raw materials, including palm oil and tea. Then they also collaborated with others to create a more sustainable palm oil industry through initiatives like the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil. So what do we learn from this? So this particular example shows us the role of collaboration, engagement with suppliers, and industry partnerships in achieving sustainable procurement goals. Okay, so everything that we have looked at in this webinar. So case study number 2 is sustainable procurement in Sweden. So this is now how governments implement green procurement. So Sweden implemented a comprehensive sustainable public procurement policy aiming to promote sustainable development across its public sector. So what approach did they use? So the Swedish government mandated that all public procurement processes include environmental and social considerations, and they set a clear criteria for sustainability and provided guidelines to procurement officers. Okay, remember when we were talking about implementing green procurement into your organization, incorporating some of these things in your procurement policy is one of the critical steps of ensuring your organization is able to adhere to sustainable procurement. Sorry. So what was the result? So this particular policy led to increased demand for environmentally friendly products, driving innovation and market growth. It also demonstrated that sustainable procurement can be a powerful tool of achieving national sustainable goals. So what is the lesson here? Of course, the lesson is that a strong government leadership and clear guidelines can shape the market behavior and drive a significant shift towards sustainable products and services. So if you localize this particular example into your organization, it means that green and sustainable procurement needs to come from management, okay? Top management and leadership needs to support procurement professionals in their endeavors to implement sustainable procurement in the organization. Another case study is the UK, United Kingdom's procurement on green procurement, where the government launched an initiative to produce electricity from renewable energy sources for public buildings and services. So its approach was to encourage the development of renewable energy projects and foster a market for clean energy. Clean energy, remember, means zero or minimal carbon emissions into the environment. So definitely they considered the environmental aspect of green procurement. So what was the result? The initiative significantly increased the demand for renewable energy and contributed to the growth of the renewable energy sector in the UK. It also demonstrated how green procurement can drive the transition to a low carbon economy. Okay, so our lesson here is that governments can use their procurement practices to support the growth of sustainable industries and technologies. Then again, finally, the IBM's sustainable supply chain, which is in line with the UN Sustainable Development Goal number 9. Okay, so IBM, all of us know IBM, a technology company, recognizes the environmental and social impact of its supply chain and aims to reduce its footprint while fostering innovation. So its approach So the IBM supplier conduct principle outline expectations for suppliers to uphold human rights, ethical practices, and environmental responsibilities. So IBM collaborates only with suppliers who improve their sustainability performance. As a result, IBM has been able to reduce its carbon emissions when producing its technological gadgets. It's been able to minimize waste. It's also contributed to the UN Sustainable Goal number 9 by promoting sustainable industry, innovation, and infrastructure. So for further reading, I would like you to have a look at the World Bank Sustainable Procurement Framework and Implementation Roadmap, whereby the World Bank has been able to publish reports and case studies on sustainable procurement practices in the context of development project, okay? So this framework will actually provide you a guidance on integrating sustainability into your particular procurement processes. Something else you could also have a quick read at is the ICRC, the International Committee of the Red Cross, Sustainable Procurement in Humanitarian Aid. So in this particular document, the ICRC has been able to publish documents and reports on sustainable procurement practices within the humanitarian sector, thereby emphasizing on the importance of ethical and sustainable sourcing within the humanitarian sector. In addition, there is also the Oxfam report on sustainable procurement and responsible sourcing, whereby Oxfam has given us case studies highlighting their efforts to integrate sustainability into procurement, okay? So this document will actually be able to offer you much more insight as to how NGOs are quickly approaching and tackling the issue of implementing sustainable procurement and responsible sourcing. Okay, so you can take a screenshot of that so that you could look at it within your free time. Okay, so thank you very much for listening in on this webinar. So we'll be open to any questions or any clarifications. What is the difference? Okay, so there's a question here from Anne Olinga. So Anne is asking, what is the difference between actual procurement and green procurement? Does the PPDA apply here? So I'm assuming PPDA stands for Public Procurement and Disposal Act, okay? I don't know about the rest of the people on the call, but this sounds like something that is in Kenya. So actual procurement and green procurement, when you're doing normal procurement, let me use normal instead of the word actual. So normal procurement, you are going to source for any goods and services or any works that your organization actually needs, okay? And the guiding principle here will basically be your organization's policies and procedures. So let's take, for example, some of your policy says something like you're going to deal with a supplier who's been registered for 5 years, or a supplier who has the technical know-how in maybe engineering or something, or a supplier who has had an annual turnover of maybe $100 million within a specific year, okay? So that is just normal procurement and you're following the normal guidelines. You're really not looking at extra factors like, is this particular supplier following the labor laws of the particular country? Is he actually overworking his people? Is he reducing his wastage? Is he emitting carbon into the environment? You're not looking at those aspects. You're just following a pre-qualified list of suppliers based on the 10 C's. You remember the 10 C's of supplier qualification? So you're just looking at those 10 C's, and from that pre-qualified list, you just go ahead and do your purchase. But in green procurement, you go a step further. you're looking at it in terms of, fine, this particular supplier has been in the industry for 5 years. They have the technical know-how, but even as they produce the particular goods and services for me, are they looking at reducing their emissions into the environment? Are they looking at creating jobs in the social environment where they actually do their business in? Have they innovated in the sense that they are able to recycle their waste over time, in that their products have the optimum life cycle, okay? So you go a step further and consider the environmental considerations that we've just looked at. You consider the social impact, you consider the economic impact as well. So where does PPDA apply here? So in the Public Procurement and Disposal Act, currently, to the best of my knowledge, the PPDA has not yet fully incorporated sustainable procurement into its guideline, okay? And as it is right now, the policymakers actually need to have a critical look at it and see how and where they can actually incorporate sustainable procurement goals or such as sustainable procurement procedures into the PPDA. So the PPDA in this particular case, if you use it as it is, it actually just guides you to do normal procurement. Okay, so I hope I've answered you, Anne.
Thank you so much, Georgina, for that. And thank you, Anne, for your question. At this time, participants who would like to ask questions live during the webinar, kindly raise your hands and we will allow you to talk. In the meantime, we do have quite an interesting question actually from Samuel Adiga, who asks, can you tell us some of the ways of motivating suppliers?
Okay, thank you, Sam. So, of course, some of the ways you can motivate your suppliers to uptake, or rather to implement green procurement into their organization, of course, is highlighting the benefits that come with it, okay? Highlighting the incentives, if there are tax incentives, if there are tax subsidies. In my country, I am based in Kenya. You find that if a supplier is if a supplier is having a reduction in carbon emissions, this reduction of carbon emissions can actually be monetized, and the government or some international bodies actually pay you that amount, okay? So whatever amount you've been able to reduce in terms of carbon emissions, it's monetized and you're given that money. Another benefit would be subsidies. If they import environmentally friendly equipment, let's say, for example, solar equipment or water resource equipment, they are able to enjoy tax-free or duty-free importations, okay? So they are able to save money in that particular way. Another way you can motivate them is an increased awareness. You could probably tell them that you're going to feature them in your intranet, or you're going to partner with them and feature them in your social media page or your public release, thereby creating an awareness or improving their brand figure. So if they're a business-oriented supplier, they'll definitely look at it in terms of a wider market equals more customers. So they'll definitely be motivated to uptake public green procurement, into their organization. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Georgina. We do have a question from Simon. Are there any differences between the challenges faced in green procurement and the actual procurement?
Okay. So, well, differences, the only probably major challenge that green procurement faces that actual procurement doesn't face is the acceptance, okay? Because and that is where we need to do a lot of stakeholder education. There is a lot of, what is it called? there's a lot of myth and a lot of people don't really understand what green procurement is. So that is a challenge that is actually not faced with actual procurement, because people know, of course, I have to do purchasing of things within the organization, but they don't understand how can you do this purchasing in a sustainable way. So if we are able to do proper stakeholder education to show the benefits and to help people appreciate green procurement, then I think it will be much easier. So apart from that, I don't think the other challenges are much different than what we currently face in the normal procurement.
Thank you so much, Georgina, for that. And in the interest of times, other questions, you can put them in our community forum. We do have quite a big community forum where such conversations do take place. And I have shared the link for you to join the community forum. At this time, I welcome Mohammed Ali Ahmed, who has a question and a comment for us. Mohammed, over to you.
Okay, Madam, thank you. Madam, I have a question is, what is the another name of green procurement, and what is the use for green for procurement, and give an example under the types of procurement. Only I have a question. Thank you, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mohammed.
Thank you.
So, like I've mentioned, another term for green procurement, of course, is sustainable procurement. And the reason why they call it sustainable procurement is because it is meant to get goods and services or items for you that are able to last over a longer period of time, okay? You're able to have a longer life cycle with the items that you get to procure. So the second part of your question was, what is the use for green procurement? Well, I'm not sure I understood that, but I would say that the use of green procurement is to ensure that you conserve your environment, okay? You're able to have energy efficient systems, you're able to purchase recyclable products, you're able to have clean technology and ecological and eco-friendly business practices and products, okay? So as a result, you're able to conserve your environment and you're able to improve the social well-being of the community that you're serving, and you're also able to improve the economic status of your suppliers and the economic status of your organization as well.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. And actually, Mohammed had another question. He asks, I have a question. What are the types of green procurement? And there is also another Mohammed as well, who did ask, this is Mohammed Khalil, who also asked around what time did people start using green procurement in the development aid or private sectors? Maybe you can answer that as our last question for the day.
Okay. Oh, that question has disappeared. When did people?
In the chat section, there is when was green procurement? When did people start using green procurement in the either humanitarian or private sector as well as public sector? And the other question is, what are the types of green procurement, if any?
Okay, all right. So green procurement has recently just been adopted and started being used in the 21st century. So we could say it just dates, probably it's less than 15 years old to the best of my knowledge, okay? So it's a recent development, and this has actually been realized with the climatic change that we have been facing. So that's why you find it is still developing. People are still trying to learn what it is about. People are still trying to find more efficient ways of doing it. So it is still a very young concept. And this is the right time to actually get into it, okay? So some of the types of green procurement, well, they are not really exact types of green procurement, just ways in which you could comply to green procurement, yeah? By having e-procurement systems. We have looked at systems like SAP Ariba, the Coupas e-procurement system, which is actually able to help you measure any sustainable purchases you have made, your ratio of sustainable products within your organization and things like that. Also, again, another way is having lean supply and proper supplier selection based on the criteria that you have set out as an organization. So those are just some of the ways you could align to green procurement. Okay, Mohammed Ali Ahmed, I hope that is clear. Is there any principle of green procurement? Yes, there are principles of green procurement. We have already looked at them in the webinar. Some of the principles are economic considerations, social considerations, and environmental considerations. Something else is also supplier and stakeholder engagement, okay?
Thank you so much, Georgina. That is all the time we have for today. I do apologize. We've gone over time a little bit, but any other questions, in case if you have any questions, kindly do put them in our Humanitarian Global Community Forum. Georgina is also part of that community forum, and she'll be able to address you directly when you put out the question in the community forum. I have shared the link for all of us to be able to join the community forum. Remember, it's free to join, and I encourage all of us to be quite interactive in the community forum. With that said, we've come to the end of our webinar today, and I'd like to thank first and foremost all the participants for being very engaging, even those of us who were quite engaging in the Q&A section as well as in the chat section. Thank you so much. Remember, we will be sharing the resources from this webinar, that is the recording, as well as the presentation from Georgina, to the email that you did register with, as well as on our community forum. So thank you so much, attendees. It has been great having you today. Thank you so much again to Georgina for taking us through today and teaching us a little bit more about green economy. Remember, here at Humanitarian Global, we do have courses on procurement and supply chain management. And if you'd like to learn more about green procurement, I encourage you to take up one of our courses. We have shared the calendar on the chat section. So I encourage you to click on the links that we've been able to share and register for one of our courses. Thank you so much again, Georgina. And finally, I'd like to thank the entire Humanitarian Global team for having facilitated this webinar. Remember, this webinar is equally live streamed on Facebook, and that is through the efforts of the team that is working behind the scenes to ensure that the webinar runs smoothly. So thank you so much to everyone, and let's meet here again next Wednesday for another interactive webinar. Thank you and goodbye.
My journey as a humanitarian started sometimes around 2016 in the NYSC camp. You know, when you finish your degree program, you need to go for a year training. So in Nigeria, we call it NYSC, National Youth Service Corps. So while at the camp, I have this staff of CUSO International. CUSO International actually is a Canadian humanitarian organization that is working towards ensuring no poverty and no equality among the community in all. So they approached the serving corps members at the camp, telling them to come and volunteer with the organization in providing services in certain communities that they will be posted to. At first, I wasn't interested. because I am a farmer. Then I realized that there are several areas where I can render my service to. I can also render my service to youths, encouraging them to have a sustainable means of livelihood in agriculture.